Ambassador Taekwon stood before the Galactic Council and waited for them to stop laughing. He was 73 years old. He had served humanity for 50 of those years. He had watched friends die in wars that were not their own. He had buried colleagues who gave their lives treating diseases on worlds they had never seen before, joining the Council's service. He had written letters to families explaining why their children would not come home. And now, the Council laughed at him. The great chamber stretched upward into darkness. Floating platforms held representatives from 100 species. Some were ancient beyond human understanding. Others had joined the Council when humanity's ancestors still lived in caves. All of them looked down at the small human standing alone on the central platform. Councillor Velos of the Marin spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. "You ask for voting rights? You ask for equal standing?" He made a sound that humans had learned to recognize as mockery. "Ambassador, your species discovered fire while we were building ships that sailed between stars. You are children among giants." Tae did not flinch. He had heard these words before. He had heard them for 40 years. "Counselor," he said calmly. "Humanity has served this council for 80 years. We have provided medical workers who treated the Andori plague when other species feared infection. We have sent engineers to rebuild colony worlds destroyed by war. We have given soldiers to fight in conflicts the elder species refused to enter. And we are grateful." High Speaker Drell interrupted. The leader of the Calyx Dominion sat on the highest platform, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. "Your service has been noted and appreciated. But service does not equal wisdom. You must understand that the Council cannot grant full membership to a species that has barely taken its first steps into the galaxy." Tae looked up at the High Speaker. He remembered Drell from decades ago, when Tae was a young diplomat just learning the ways of council politics. Drell had been cold then. He was colder now. "How many more steps must we take?" Tae asked. "How many more of our people must die in your service before we earn the right to speak as equals?" Silence fell over the chamber. It was not a respectful silence. It was the silence of those who could not believe what they had just heard. Councillor Velos spoke again, and this time there was no laughter in his voice, only contempt. "You forget your place, Ambassador. Humans are classified as a probationary species. You serve at our pleasure. You exist within our protection. Without the Council, your little world would have been conquered a dozen times over." "We have never asked for protection," Tae said quietly. "We have only asked for respect." The vote was quick, unanimous. Humanity's request for equal standing was denied. Tae walked out of the chamber without looking back. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. Behind him, he could hear the Council moving on to other business. More important business, business that mattered. Captain Una Park found him 3 hours later on the observation deck of Station Prime. She was 42 years old, commander of the human fleet assigned to Council peacekeeping operations. She had lost 17 ships in the last year alone, all of them defending worlds whose inhabitants would never know her name. "I heard," she said simply. Tae stood at the window, watching stars drift past. "I have made this request 40 times. 40 times in 40 years. The answer is always the same." Una moved to stand beside him. "What did you expect?" "I expected nothing." Tae's voice was tired. "I hoped for something." "There is a difference." They stood in silence for a long moment. Below them, the station hummed with activity. Ships came and went. Species from across the galaxy walked its corridors, conducted their business, lived their lives. And somewhere among them, humans worked, humans served, humans died. "I received a message from Earth," Una said finally. "From the new Chancellor." Tae turned to look at her. "Hana Cho, she won the election last month. Youngest Chancellor in history." Una paused. "She wants us to come home. All of us. All of us." Tae considered this. For 80 years, humanity had tried to prove itself to the galaxy. For 80 years, they had given everything and asked for nothing. And for 80 years, they had been told that they were not enough. "What does she intend?" he asked. Una shook her head. She didn't say. Her message was short. Just 3 sentences. She pulled out a small device and read aloud. "Come home. All of you, it's time we stopped asking. The words hung in the air between them. Tay turned back to the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the stations and the trade routes and the patrol zones, there was a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. It was not an important world by council standards. It was not ancient. It was not powerful. It was simply home. I have spent my entire adult life in these halls, Tay said slowly. I have learned their languages. I have studied their customs. I have tried to understand why they look at us and see nothing worth respecting. He paused. Do you know what I have learned? What? They will never see us. His voice was quiet but certain. They will take our doctors and our engineers and our soldiers. They will use our ships and our resources and our lives, but they will never see us. We are tools to them. Useful tools, perhaps, but tools do not deserve seats at the table. Tools do not deserve voices in the chamber. Tools do not deserve respect. Yuna said nothing. There was nothing to say. Contact Chancellor Cho, Tay said finally. Tell her I understand. Tell her I will bring our people home. All of them? Tay looked at her. And for the first time in years, she saw something in his eyes that she did not recognize. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was something quieter. Something final. All of them, he said. Every doctor. Every engineer. Every soldier. Every merchant and teacher and worker. All of them. The council will not be pleased. Tay smiled. It was a small smile. Without warmth. The council has made it very clear that our pleasure does not matter to them. Perhaps it is time they learned that theirs does not matter to us. He walked away from the window, leaving Yuna alone with the stars. Somewhere in the distance, a human transport ship departed from the station. Its passengers did not look back. They were going home. They did not know it yet. But they were the first. Soon, there would be more, and then more, until finally, the galaxy would wake up one morning and discover that the children they had dismissed were gone, and by then, it would be too late to call them back. Dr. Jin Seo packed his research files into a small metal case. Around him, the Velaran Medical Research Station hummed with activity. Alien scientists moved through the corridors, speaking in languages Jin had spent 20 years learning to understand. None of them looked at him. None of them ever did. He had worked at this station for 15 years. He had helped develop treatments for diseases that killed millions. His research on neural decay had saved 3 species from extinction. And in all that time, not one of his colleagues had learned to pronounce his name correctly. His assistant, a young Marin named Tolik, entered the lab. Dr. Jin, are you taking a holiday? Jin smiled. Something like that. When will you return? Jin closed the case and sealed it. Inside were years of work, research notes, test results. The key to curing a disease that would claim 10,000 lives this year alone. The Marin scientists had called his methods primitive. They had laughed at his intuition-based approach. They had told him that real science required centuries of tradition, not the wild guesses of a young species. Now, they would have to finish the work themselves. I'm not sure when I'll be back, Jin said. Take care of yourself, Tolik. He walked out of the station without saying goodbye to anyone else. No one noticed him leave. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in silence. Commander Sung Baek sat in his office on the military station Fortress Prime, reviewing troop positions. 2,300,000 human soldiers were stationed across council space. They guarded borders. They patrolled trade routes. They fought in wars that the elder species considered too dangerous or too unimportant to fight themselves. His screen showed a message from Trade Minister Wu Han. The merchant fleets were already moving. 3,000 ships were quietly completing their current contracts and setting course for human territory. By the end of the month, the flow of goods through council space would slow to a trickle. Sung began typing orders. He did not write dramatic commands or angry declarations. He simply changed schedules. He rotated personnel. He approved leave requests that had been waiting for years. The human soldiers would finish their current shifts. They would complete their current missions. And then, one by one, they would not return. High Speaker Drell first noticed something wrong 3 months later. He was reviewing reports in his private chamber when an aide brought news of supply shortages on the Calyx border colonies. The shipments were late. The merchants who usually carried the goods had not arrived. Find out what happened, Drell ordered. He thought nothing more of it. A week later, the reports multiplied. Medical stations were running low on staff. Engineering projects were falling behind schedule. Border patrols were reporting gaps in coverage. Drell summoned his advisors. What is happening? They had no answers. They had not been paying attention. Why would they? The work was being done by humans. Humans were reliable. Humans were always there, until they weren't. Councillor Velos called an emergency meeting of the council. The humans are leaving, he announced, as if this were some kind of betrayal. They are abandoning their posts. They are breaking their contracts. They are doing no such thing, Ambassador Tay said calmly. He stood on the central platform once again. This time, he did not ask for anything. He did not request respect or equality or recognition. He simply stood there, waiting. Then explain this chaos, Velos demanded. Tay pulled a small data chip from his pocket. This contains humanity's formal withdrawal from all council treaties, agreements, and obligations. Every contract has been honored. Every term has been fulfilled. We have broken nothing. Drell leaned forward on his platform. You cannot simply leave. We are a probationary species, Tay reminded him. You have told us this many times. Probationary status can be ended at any time, by either party. We are ending it. This is blackmail, Velos snarled. You think you can force us to accept your demands by withdrawing your service? No. Tay's voice was quiet. We are not demanding anything. We are not threatening anything. We are simply leaving. Why? Tay looked up at the counselor who had laughed at him so many times. Because we were never really here. You made that very clear. He placed the data chip on the platform and walked toward the exit. The chamber was silent. 100 species watched him go, and not one of them moved to stop him. At the door, Tay paused and turned back. We wish the council well, he said. We hope you find others willing to do the work we did. Perhaps they will be old enough to earn your respect. Then he was gone. Chancellor Hana Cho watched the reports come in from her office in Seoul. She was 38 years old, the youngest leader in Earth's history. Some had called her election a mistake. Some had said she was too young, too inexperienced, too idealistic. She had simply smiled and done what needed to be done. The withdrawal was proceeding smoothly. Human workers were returning from across the galaxy. Some had been gone for decades. Some had children who had never seen Earth. All of them were coming home. Her advisor, Director Uncha, entered with a tablet. The council has sent 17 messages demanding explanation. High Speaker Drell has threatened sanctions. What kind of sanctions? Trade restrictions, travel bans, military action. Hana laughed softly. Military action? With what army? Half their soldiers are human. We're human, Un corrected. They're on their way home now. Hana stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city stretched toward the horizon. Towers of glass and steel reached toward the sky. Ships rose and fell from orbital platforms. It was not the oldest civilization in the galaxy. It was not the most powerful, but it was hers. It was theirs. My grandmother used to tell me a story, she said, about a farmer who helped his neighbors plant their fields every year. He worked hard. He never complained. And every harvest, his neighbors would celebrate together while he went home alone. What happened to him? One year, he stopped helping. He stayed home and planted his own fields instead. Hana turned back to Un. His neighbors were angry at first. They said he was selfish. They said he was betraying their community. But when the harvest came, they realized something important. What? They realized they had never invited him to celebrate in the first place. They had never shared their harvest with him. They had never treated him as a neighbor at all. Hana smiled. They had treated him as a tool. And when the tool stopped working, they finally understood what they had lost. She picked up her tablet and began reviewing the next set of reports. There was much work to do. Human colonies needed support. Trade routes needed reorganizing. A civilization that had spent 80 years serving others now needed to learn how to serve itself. But for the first time in a long time, Hana felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Not hope that the galaxy would change. Not hope that the Council would learn. Just hope that humanity would finally have the chance to build something of its own. Something that belonged to them. Something that no one could take away. Outside her window, another ship rose toward the stars. It was carrying humans home, and somewhere in the darkness of space, the galaxy began to realize that something was wrong. The plague ship drifted into the Marin homeworld's orbit on a cold morning in spring. Its crew was dead. All 47 of them. They had been carrying medical supplies to a colony on the outer rim when the neural decay struck. Without Dr. Jin's research, without the treatment protocols he had developed, there was nothing anyone could do. The disease spread through the ship in 3 days. By the 4th day, no one was left to call for help. Counselor Velo stood at the window of his tower, watching emergency teams approach the vessel. 3 more ships had suffered similar fates this month. The death toll was climbing toward 10,000. And his scientists still could not replicate the human doctor's work. "We need to find him," Velo said to his aide. "This Jin So. We need to bring him back." The aide hesitated. "Counselor, he has returned to human space. Our ships are not permitted to enter their territory." "Then send a message. Offer him whatever he wants. We have sent messages, many messages." The aide's voice was careful. "He has not responded." Velos turned from the window. His face was older now. The arrogance that had once filled his voice had faded into something quieter, something that might have been fear. "Why?" he asked. "Why would he not help? We are dying." The aide said nothing. There was nothing to say. Across the galaxy, the unraveling continued. Governor Q Park stood on the observation deck of New Busan, watching human freighters dock at the colony's growing station. 3 years ago, this had been a small outpost on the edge of human territory. Now it was becoming a hub of trade and industry. His tablet showed reports from Council space. Trade routes were collapsing. Without human merchants willing to travel through dangerous regions, goods were piling up in warehouses. Prices were rising. Colonies that depended on imports were beginning to starve. "The Kalix have lost 3 systems," his aide reported. Border conflicts they had ignored for decades. Without human peacekeepers, the fighting spread. Q nodded. He had expected this. They all had. "Any response from the Council?" High Speaker Drell has called for military action against human territory. The vote failed. Half the Council's forces were human. The aide smiled grimly. "They don't have enough ships to threaten us. And the other half? Unwilling to fight. The elder species built their empires on the backs of younger races. They have forgotten how to wage their own wars." Q turned back to the window. He felt no satisfaction in the Council's suffering. He felt no joy in their pain. He simply felt tired. Tired of being dismissed. Tired of being ignored. Tired of watching his people die for those who would never see them as equals. "Keep our borders secure," he said. "Help any humans who want to return home. But do not provoke the Council. We are not seeking revenge. We are simply seeking peace." Counselor Thren of the Oran Collective made an unusual request 3 months later. He asked to address the Council alone. The chamber was quieter now. Some species had stopped sending representatives. Others had withdrawn into isolation, unwilling to face the consequences of their collective arrogance. But enough remained to hear what Thren had to say. He was old for his kind. His scales had faded from bright blue to pale gray. His voice was soft, but it carried through the chamber like a whisper in an empty room. "I have served on this council for 200 years, he began. "I have seen species rise and fall. I have watched empires crumble and new ones take their place. And in all that time, I have never seen anything like what is happening now." He paused, looking around the chamber. "We are discovering something that we should have known long ago. The humans did not simply assist us. They did not simply serve us. They held our civilization together, while we looked away." Counselor Velos tried to interrupt. "This is dramatic exaggeration. We are facing temporary difficulties. Nothing more." "Temporary?" Thren's voice sharpened. 3 species are dying of diseases human doctors were treating. 17 trade routes have collapsed. 42 border conflicts have erupted into open warfare. Our economy has contracted by 30% in 2 years. He shook his head. These are not temporary difficulties. This is the beginning of the end. Then we must force them to return. Another counselor said, we must make them understand their obligations. What obligations? Thren asked quietly. We called them children. We denied them respect. We took their service as our right and gave nothing in return. What obligations do they owe to masters who never acknowledged their worth? The chamber fell silent. I have studied the humans, Thren continued. I have watched them for 80 years. Do you know what I have learned? They are not like us. When they help, they do not expect payment. When they serve, they do not demand recognition. They simply do what needs to be done, because it needs to be done. He looked up at High Speaker Drell's platform. The great leader sat in shadow, his face unreadable. We had something precious, Thren said. We had a species willing to share our burdens, to carry our weight, to stand beside us in our darkest hours, and we threw them away because we were too proud to see their value. They will return, Drell said flatly. They need us, do they? Thren's voice was sad. Their colonies are growing. Their trade networks are expanding. Their technology is advancing. They are building a civilization of their own, and they are doing it without us. He paused. We needed them, High Speaker. We always needed them. We were simply too blind to see it. Admiral Min Ji-yoon received the Council's message 3 days later. She read it twice, then set it aside. What did they say? Her aide asked. They want to negotiate. They're offering improved status in exchange for resumed service. Will you respond? Minji looked out at the fleet gathered around Earth's orbital station. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of crew. All of them had once served the Council. All of them had once believed in the dream of galactic community. All of them had been told that dream was not for them. Tell them we have no interest in negotiation, she said finally. Tell them we have no desire for improved status. Tell them that we have discovered something interesting in their absence. What's that? Minji smiled. It was not a warm smile. We don't need them. We never did. We joined them because we believed in something greater than ourselves. They taught us that belief was a mistake. She turned away from the window. We won't make that mistake again. The message was sent. The Council received it in silence, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, an empire that had stood for 10,000 years began to crumble. Prince Morel stood before the Marin Council of Elders and spoke words that had never been spoken in that chamber. My father was wrong. The elders shifted uncomfortably. Councillor Velos sat in the highest seat, his face frozen in cold anger. His son's rebellion was not unexpected. Young Morel had always been different. He had spent time among humans, learned their languages, studied their ways. He had become corrupted by their ideas. You speak of things you do not understand, Velos said. The humans were useful. Nothing more. Their departure is unfortunate, but we will survive, will we? Morel's voice was steady. The neural decay claims 300 lives each day. Our trade networks have collapsed. Our military cannot hold our borders. In 4 years, we have lost more than we gained in the previous 400. He looked at his father. We called them children while they raised our wounded, fed our hungry, and defended our borders. What does that make us? Velos rose from his seat. It makes us the eldest species in the galaxy. It makes us the founders of civilization itself. It makes us everything the humans could never be. It makes us fools, Morel said quietly. Proud fools who could not see the gift we were given, until it was taken away. He turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the elders argued among themselves. But Morel was not listening anymore. He had said what needed to be said. Now it was time to act. High Speaker Drell authorized a formal delegation to Earth 1 month later. It was not his choice. The Council had forced his hand. Too many species were suffering. Too many systems were failing. Something had to be done. The delegation arrived at Earth's orbital platform Harmony with great ceremony. 3 ships, 50 diplomats, representatives from 12 species. They expected to negotiate from a position of strength. They expected to offer the humans improved status and receive gratitude in return. Director Yuncha received them in a simple meeting room with plain walls and uncomfortable chairs. She offered them water. She did not offer them tea. "Thank you for coming," she said politely. "How can I help you?" The lead diplomat, a Calyx named Torek, placed a formal document on the table. The Galactic Council offers humanity full membership, voting rights, representation on all committees. Everything you asked for. Un looked at the document but did not touch it. And, in exchange, you resume your previous contributions. Medical workers return to their stations. Engineers return to their projects. Soldiers return to their posts. I see. Un's voice was calm. You've come to offer us what we asked for decades ago. After decades of service. After we proved our value by absence rather than presence. Torek shifted uncomfortably. The Council acknowledges that mistakes were made. We are prepared to move forward in a spirit of cooperation. Mistakes were made. Un repeated the word slowly. That's an interesting way to describe what happened. You laughed at us. You dismissed us. You took our people and used them and discarded them. And now you say mistakes were made. We are offering you everything you wanted. No. Un's voice hardened. You are offering us a transaction. Service for status. Work for recognition. But we've discovered something interesting in your absence. She leaned forward. We don't need you. We never did. We joined the Council because we believed in community, in shared purpose. You taught us that was foolish. The delegation returned to Council space empty-handed. Councillor Thren made an unusual journey 3 weeks later. He did not travel with guards or advisors. He did not announce his arrival. He simply boarded a small transport ship and flew to Earth. He found Elder Bora Kim in a garden outside Seoul. She was 89 years old, a philosopher who had spent her life trying to bridge the gap between human and council cultures. She had written books. She had given lectures. She had believed, for most of her life, that understanding was possible. Now she grew vegetables. Councillor Thren, she said without looking up from her work. I wondered when one of you would come. Thren lowered himself to the ground beside her. His old bones protested, but he ignored them. I came to ask a question, then ask, is there a path back? Is there any way to heal what has been broken? Bora continued her work, pulling weeds from between rows of beans. Her hands were spotted with age, but they moved with practiced skill. Your council sees this as a negotiation, she said finally. A transaction. That is why you will fail. Help me understand. Bora sat back on her heels and looked at him. Her eyes were sharp despite her years. Humans didn't leave because we wanted better terms. We left because we were never seen, never heard, never valued. You cannot negotiate someone into feeling valued. You cannot offer enough rewards to make someone forget that they were treated as less than nothing. Thren was silent for a long moment. Then what must we do? Something your council has never done in its 1,000-year history. Bora's voice was gentle but firm. Admit you were wrong. Not strategically. Not as a diplomatic tactic. Genuinely. The council does not apologize. It never has. I know. Bora returned to her weeding. That is why you will fail. Thren watched her work for a long time. Around them, the garden grew in orderly rows. Vegetables reached toward the sun. Birds sang in nearby trees. It was a simple place. A peaceful place. A human place. I have served the council for 200 years, he said finally. I have seen it make many mistakes, but I have never seen it face the consequences of those mistakes. We have always found someone else to blame, someone else to punish, someone else to carry the burden of our failures. And now there is no one else. Thren's voice was heavy. We are alone with what we have done. Bora nodded slowly. That is the first step. The first step toward what? Toward understanding. She looked at him with something that might have been compassion. Your council does not need humans, counselor. It needs humility. It needs the courage to look at itself honestly and see what it has become. Until you find that courage, no negotiation will help. No offer will be enough. No words will bridge the gap you have created. Thren rose slowly to his feet. His bones ached. His heart ached more. Thank you for your honesty, he said. Thank you for asking. Bora smiled. You are the first council member to come to us with questions instead of demands. That gives me hope. Hope for what? Hope that someday, someone will have the wisdom to listen. Thren returned to council space the next day. He did not speak of his visit to Earth. He did not share what he had learned. But something had changed in him. Something quiet. Something small. Something that might, in time, grow into something larger. In her garden, Bora continued her work. The vegetables grew. The sun rose and set. And somewhere in the stars, an empire struggled with a question it had never thought to ask. What does it mean to be truly sorry? High Speaker Drell stood alone on the transport platform, waiting for the ship that would carry him to Earth. He was old now. 10 years had passed since the humans left. 10 years of watching everything he had built crumble. 10 years of listening to advisors tell him that the crisis would pass, that the humans would return, that the council would survive. The advisors had been wrong. The council was dying. He carried no guards. He brought no diplomats. He came with nothing but the weight of 10 years of failure pressing down on his shoulders. The ship arrived in Earth orbit 3 days later. Chancellor Hana Cho sent no welcome party. There was no ceremony. There was only a single transport waiting to take him to the surface. He found Ambassador Taekwon in a small garden outside Seoul. The old diplomat was kneeling in the dirt, tending flowers. His hands were stained with soil. His back was bent with age, but when he looked up at Drell, his eyes were clear and sharp. High Speaker, he said calmly. I wondered if you would come. Drell stood at the edge of the garden, uncertain how to proceed. In his entire life, he had never felt uncertain. He had ruled the Calyx Dominion for 300 years. He had led the Galactic Council for 200 more. He had commanded fleets and shaped empires, and decided the fate of billions. Now he stood before an old man with dirty hands, and he did not know what to say. I came to apologize, he said finally. Tae continued his gardening. He did not look up. Your council has apologized before. Strategic apologies, calculated admissions designed to achieve specific outcomes. This is different, is it? Drell looked at the old human. 80 years ago, this man had stood before the council and asked for respect. 80 years ago, Drell had laughed at him. 80 years ago, the council had voted unanimously to deny humanity a place among equals. And now, that same human knelt in a garden, growing flowers, while an empire begged for his attention. I laughed at you, Drell said. His voice was rough. The words were difficult. I dismissed your contributions as beneath notice. I watched your people die in our wars and felt nothing. I was wrong. Tae's hands paused in the soil. He did not speak, not because your absence hurt us. Drell continued. Though it did. I was wrong because you deserved better. Because your people deserved better. And I was too proud to see it. Slowly, Drell lowered himself to the ground. His old body protested. His joints ached. But he knelt in the dirt beside the human who had spent his life asking for nothing more than recognition. Tae looked at him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Get up, Tae said finally. What? Get up. Tae's voice was tired but not unkind. Sitting in dirt doesn't make you humble. Living humbly does. He reached out a hand and helped Drell to his feet. The High Speaker stood unsteadily, soil clinging to his robes. Why did you come alone? Tae asked. Because this is not about the council. It is not about politics or diplomacy or power. Drell's voice was quiet. It is about what I did, what I failed to see, what I refused to understand. Tae studied the alien who had dismissed him for so many years. He saw no calculation in those ancient eyes. No strategy, just the weight of a life spent making mistakes and finally, beginning to understand them. Come with me, Tae said. There is someone you should meet. The formal reconciliation took 3 more years. It was not quick because humans demanded concessions. It was slow because genuine change required rebuilding from the ground up. The probationary species classification was abolished. New frameworks were created to ensure all species had voice and representation, regardless of how long they had traveled among stars. Prince Morel of the Marin led the reforms. He worked with Counselor Thren and Director Un, to write new charters and establish new protocols. It was difficult work. Many of the elder species resisted, many could not accept that the old ways were gone, but slowly, gradually, things began to change. The ceremony marking humanity's return was held on the orbital platform Harmony. The station had been built during the separation, a symbol of human independence. Now it would serve as a symbol of something else, a new beginning. Chancellor Hana Cho stood beside Councillor Thren as they signed the new charter. She was old now, her hair white and her steps slow, but her voice was strong as she spoke the words that would reshape the galaxy. "We do not return as servants," she said. "We do not return as subjects. We return as partners, as equals, as members of a community that has finally learned to see all of its people." In the audience, Ambassador Tay watched with Elder Bora beside him. They had known each other for decades. They had both spent their lives trying to bridge the gap between humanity and the galaxy, and now, at last, they were watching that bridge being built. "Do you think it will last?" Bora asked quietly. Tay smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm with something he had almost forgotten. "Hope. No," he said. "Nothing lasts forever. Someday, the old pride will return. Someday, new conflicts will arise. Someday, everything we have built will be tested again. Then why do you smile? Because this time, when it fractures, they will remember what it cost to ignore us." He looked at the ceremony unfolding before them. They will remember the years of loss. They will remember the price of arrogance, and perhaps that memory will make them pause before they make the same mistakes again. Bora nodded slowly. "That's progress." "Yes," Tay said. "That's progress." A young human diplomat took his seat at the new council table. His name was Ho Yun. He was 32 years old, barely old enough to remember the separation. But he carried the weight of those years with him. He carried the memory of what his people had endured, and the hope of what they might become. Around him, species who had once dismissed humanity as children watched with something new in their eyes. Respect. High Speaker Drell was not at the ceremony. He had died 6 months earlier, his final years spent in quiet contemplation of the mistakes he had made. But before he passed, he had recorded a message for the humans. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I am sorry. And I hope that someday, when you look back at what we were, you will also see what we tried to become." The message was played at the ceremony's end. Many species wept. Many humans did too. And then, as the last notes faded and the chamber fell silent, Representative Ho Yun rose to his feet. He looked around at the faces watching him. Alien faces. Strange faces. Faces that had once looked at his kind and seen nothing worth respecting. "Thank you," he said simply, "for seeing us at last." He sat down. The council moved on to other business. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a galaxy that had spent 10,000 years looking down on others began, slowly, to learn how to look across instead. It was not an ending. It was not a victory. It was simply a beginning, and sometimes, beginnings are enough.